Okay, so we are live, apparently. I gave myself an extra 5 minutes because I wasn't sure how things were going to go. Haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks, or at least I didn't do one last weekend. So I feel like there's probably a lot of Q&A to potentially do. So I figured, I wasn't going to have a specific topic for this one. Wow, phone is going off like crazy. And I figured we could just dive right into some Q&A and general questions. You feel free to, ask purchase advice questions. Also, let me know how the sound is, because as a one-man situation here, it's difficult to monitor that. See, Rob Hawk is already here. Let me just send this to all the places. Think that's good. Just doing a couple things to get started. Feel free to post your questions and I will get to them forthwith. All right. I think we're all set up and ready to rock. What is your favorite question? Any question from you, my man? Hi from the Netherlands. Hi from New York City. I wish I could speak Dutch. I can speak German, but it's different enough where it sounds familiar, but it doesn't. I can't actually understand what the words are. So, I say hi from Egypt. Hi from Mexico. Interesting. I used to say, sir, you have the longest name on YouTube I've ever come across. That's amazing. All right. Daily reminder that the Harman IE target is pure shout. I find it shouty, but I think that's the issue with it, is that for people who have an ear canal such that that has that effect, it's bound to be a little bit intense. And so yeah, I mean, I think the nice thing with the over ear one is that, as Chronicles mentioned before, you don't have to assume as much with the over ear stuff. Whereas with in ears, you have to assume more. Will you get to hear the IE600? Yeah, so DMS actually has it's, I think, I'm not sure when it's actually getting released, but I think it's sometime in the summer, so it'll be a while before I have an actual unit on hand that's a production unit. And maybe I'll revisit it and do another do a video then. But DMS has also offered to send his unit out to some of the other reviewers on the team, so I might throw my hat in that ring, and we'll see if we can get something going there, because he certainly likes it a lot. Why do you use Elegia frequently for streaming? Okay, this is a question I get all the time. This is not an Elegia. This is an Elir, so it's open back with the Utopia pads. I think people see it from this angle, and it looks like an Elegia, right? But it is not. Why are you not wearing your LCD XC? That's right over there, because it is a very heavy headphone, and we're just doing a live stream. So, I don't need to really. I don't need to deal with that weight unless I'm spending time specifically listening to music. Goedemorgen van Nederland. Yeah, see that I do know that. Would you like to see top quality USB connected active headphones with integrated DSP/EQ? Why don't they make any? Because I'm not sure, but I think they do make that in the. So you're talking about like the high end, right? Like, because that they do make that. Like, there's a lot of headphones that have that kind of stuff going on. I think it's probably because of the additional costs required for integrating something like that. But it'd be very interesting. I think there is room for a high end, like acoustically good headphone, open or closed, but maybe maybe yeah. I mean, I think there is room for that. Yeah, it's just additional costs, I imagine. But yeah, I would imagine that would be there's potential there. Yeah. The other thing that I think is actually more likely to happen on the horizon is something with some sort of electrical filters that are not digital, like what you're suggesting there with digital signal processing and EQ. Yeah. Elygia versus Aeon 2 closed back battle. Okay, so that's not a fair comparison. It should be Elygia versus Aeon X closed, in which case I'm going to say Aeon X closed, because the tuning of this, the frequency response, is significantly more balanced without EQ. With Elygia, I mean, yes, it has better, let's say technicalities for certain things, but it definitely has a very mid forward kind of tuning. So I would need to EQ that. Plus, the Aeon X close is less. I mean, it is also very sensitive to seal for bass, but the clamp is a little bit stronger on the Aeon X, so I think you'll have an easier time with that. Hi from Turkey. Hello. I've always wanted to go to Turkey. A more basic question. What is a question? Can you tell me what a question is? Is this when we have to answer every question with a question? Am I good at that? All right. Hi from Australia. All right. Guten Abend. Mexico has many hidden audiophiles, but it's so hard to find people to meet IRL to share good gear and experience. Yeah. We're only okay. I mean, audiophiles in person. Do you really need us? No, I'm just kidding. Belgium here, nice. I just saw a review of a few amplifiers. In the review, it was claimed that some instruments were more in the foreground on some amplifiers. How can that be? I don't know. If you're talking tube amplifiers, yeah, I can kind of see that. I could see some effect there. And there's also maybe the potential for other unique designs for certain amplifiers. Maybe some that conserve second and third harmonic distortion or something like that. The more you learn about this stuff, the more you realize how significant psychoacoustic effects are. And psychoacoustic in this case being like say you have two things with the same frequency response, one having audible second harmonic distortion and the other one not. It isn't going to sound distorted. It's just going to sound a little different in some ways. So I'm not saying that you're going to hear that from most amplifiers. There is another, but potentially that could be why. If there is a certain tube amp or something like that where there's some sort of elevation of that, and then you have this effect. But realistically, I think the more likely scenario is that the person doing that test didn't have the amplifier volume matched, or there's other like power, like impedance synergies that are causing this impedance effects that are causing an actual change to the frequency response. Chronicle Plus Gamer Hours, what's up, man? Gamer Hours, are you gaming right now? I really want to get back into games because I've spent so much time. Like, I used to game competitively, but ever since kind of doing the headphone thing, I really have not had the time, because if you're playing games, you're wearing headphones, and you might be evaluating headphones for gaming, but you're not able to focus on, like, maybe I need to find some game where I can just focus on the music, right? And it's more just like casual, but that's not how. I'm not playing games to make friends. I'm curious if you or anyone on your team has tried out the Ferrum Airco and compared them to Ferrum, or I have not, and I don't know anybody on our team who has. Any early, but maybe we will. Any early thoughts on the ZMF new Atrium? It's very interesting. The ZMF Tour is, in my view, the best tuned ZMF, and I love that tuning. And so if there's a version of that is a little more technical, that's really exciting. And biodynamic drivers are great. So there's a lot of people who love them, including me as well. So yeah, I'm very interested. I'd love to hear it, and I know that Zach is very busy, and what they're doing there, there's like I bet as soon as he announced that the atrium, he got slammed with hundreds of emails from reviewers, people like me, people asking to get a chance to review it, and I did reach out, but I have not heard back. So I think it's just there's it's too much hype, and I am not a sufficiently high enough profile, or at least for what they're doing, to be high on that list. So maybe we'll get one in at some point. I would love to, but at the moment I don't have. There's no timeline for that. Let's see. Which focal pads are the most comfortable? Which ones are the best paired with the clear? I should do like more pad comparisons with the clear specifically, because that's one that I did the Duconi pad comparisons, but I don't think I did the Utopia pads in the clear. So I'll have to try that, but it might be the Utopia pads. Yeah, I'm gonna say my favorite pads are the Utopia pads. I want to thank you for one super advice you gave was not chase ultimate headphone amplifier, but invest in better headphones. Yes. So now investing in headphones, happy with my A90 and Synxer. What's funny is that I'm not a big fan of the A90, but you have an A90. So just don't look at the amplifier world anymore. just unless you're going to spend unless you get some sort of crazy windfall. I mean, even the A90 is overkill for you're never going to use more than a certain percentage of the power that's available there. So really, the amplifier game, as you put it there, or no, somebody else might have put that, but yeah, the amplifier world it's such a it plays to the sunk cost, our willingness to commit the sunk cost fallacy. I bought a pair of headphones and I want to make them as good as they possibly can. How do I do that? By spending more than twice the amount of money that you spent on the headphones. That is no. I'm always going to recommend putting most of your spend into headphones. I think that's there's maybe some people who are going to be like, no, it matters. Yeah, okay, it might matter, but it doesn't even come close to how it's not even remotely proportional to how much the headphones matter. Mount Rushmore of IEM. Not sure what that means. Not the best, but just like the real. I can't make sense of this comment. Sorry. Not the best, but just like the real Mount Rushmore, it was presidents that changed the United States. What the hell? Pick four IEMs. Pick four IEMs that you think should be up there and did the same. Okay, so the Mount Rushmore of IEMs, I think, is what you're getting at. Good question. Okay. So, so U12T for sure. I'm going to actually say Campfire Andromeda. As much as, that was their big, hit. The Campfire Andromeda definitely did a lot, as far as changing a lot important in the IEM landscape. I'm going to say the Blessing 2 and Blessing 2 Dusk, depending on which, that's kind of cheating saying 2 there, but depending on which side you fall there, but Blessing 2 Dusk for sure, because that was really kind of like the largest scale coming out party for Chi-Fi, and it was always in a number of communities, right, in North America. People knew about it, but it didn't have the more mainstream appeal, and because of the Blessing 2 and Blessing 2 Dusk, also largely thanks to Mr. Chronicle, it saw a very massive upswing in popularity, to the point where now the most prominent brands in IEMs are apart from 64 Audio, I guess, and a couple of others, but it's generally Moondrop and The Audio and those brands. Dunu. I'm gonna say, I mean, as far as IEMs for the fourth one there, as far as IEMs that I like in that grouping, it is the SA6. But I don't know if I would say that the SA6 really changed the landscape for IEMs. I think it did. It did so for providing. I mean, it's the only one that I'm aware of in that sub 1,000 price bracket that kind of goes for that same smooth, somewhat relaxed. Presentation in a world in a time when everybody's going for a lot more 3K, a lot more upper mids, dare I say a lot more shouty. that's also just me. So I don't know if I would say that because it didn't really shake things up as much as the SA6 or as the Blessing to Dusk did. So I don't know. The fourth one is a tough one. I would almost want to say something that is, I think you could make a case for the audio Monarch Mark II. It's because even in more recent times, it's really shaken things up a bit as far as the price to performance goes, even within their own lineup. But not everybody, that tuning is the most, like, let's say, analytic, normal, neutral, like I shouldn't say analytic in the bright sense, but like it is the most out of all of those normal with the bass boost, and basically taking that tuning to the top. So in some ways I would say the Theaudio Monarch Mark II. And another way to look at it would be like you could say that those whatever version of those Moondrop dynamic driver IEMs, those are fairly important because they are at a more aggressive price tag, right? They're more budget. So yeah, those would generally be my picks. I mean, I know I said like more than 4, but I think they're pretty important. Let's see. I don't have any thoughts on bass rocker seats. Sorry. I gotta catch up here. That was a bit of a long-winded answer. Sorry, guys. What does it mean to have a low resonance frequency? Can this question be answered simply? Okay. I don't think it can be answered simply. All right. So if you take a planar magnetic headphone, right? Like this is an AN2 Noir. Actually, it might be best. See if I have it open back here somewhere. I do not. Not in arm's reach, unfortunately. Okay, so take a planar magnetic headphone. That will have a driver resonance somewhere in the lower frequencies. And depending on, and that's if the headphone is decoupled from the side of the head, right? So imagine that I'm wearing this, and there's not a perfect seal between the pads and my head, right? When you have a headphone that is well coupled to the side of the head, so there's a seal right here where people typically call this the front volume seal. When you have it coupled, it creates a system with the eardrum, and when you have it decoupled, it sort of breaks that system. Meaning that when you break that seal, you will be able to find out where the driver resonance frequency is, at which part of the frequency response the driver resonance is, and that's sometimes written as capital F lowercase s, so we call it FS. And this has a pretty significant influence on headphones where they might not have the strongest clamp. So if you have like the Headphone Edition XS, for example, one of the things that I talked about with that headphone is that the nice thing about it is that while the clamp isn't very strong, right, you have cup swivel, it doesn't matter. The clamp pressure doesn't, the lack of clamp pressure doesn't matter as much because the driver resonance frequency is so low that you will still get the bass presence even when the seal is a little broken, right? There are other headphones like this one where the driver resonance frequency is at around 400-500 hertz. It's very high, And in this case, if you break the coupling, like if the seal is broken with the pads here in some way, maybe you have glasses with really thick arms or something like that, you lose all the frequencies below 500, whatever the resonance frequency is. So that's really how the resonance frequency functions. It sort of determines where the bottom part of the frequency response is if it were measured in free air. Now, that last part is kind of key because in cases like this headphone here, it doesn't really, that fact doesn't matter unless you're breaking the seal. And that's also why they have to go with these massive pads, right? And these pads that conform really well to the side of the head. And what that allows for is essentially your resonance frequency is very high, 400, 500 hertz here, right? But because it's designed in such a way, with the clamp force that it has and the pad structure that it has, it's designed in such a way that you're more likely to get a good seal with this headphone, meaning that it doesn't matter that the driver resonance frequency is so high. You will get all the bass all the way down into the sub bass, and it won't drop out, because essentially what's going on there is now that system with the eardrum is intact, and it's effectively controlling that resonance, the bass boost that would show up from the driver resonance frequency. It's controlling that in a way that allows you to get full bass extension. As I said, there's no way to explain that simply, and I know I've done a poor job of that, but that's sort of the best way that I could explain it. It's a way that basically it'll tell you certain things about the driver, right? It's a boost that happens somewhere in the lower frequencies, and then after the boost, it just drops off completely. It's the bottom part of where the driver is going to produce sound, and that can be controlled in a number of different ways. And you can there are some headphones where it's actually okay if there's a leak, and there's other headphones where it's really not, because of where that is. The way you influence that parameter is you have either a larger diaphragm can make it so that is lower. A smaller diaphragm typically means that it's going to be higher. So a lot of it has to do with the overall moving mass that's going on there, and so physical size of the driver. So that's why, like, hi-fi man headphones, they typically have really low resonance frequencies because their drivers are enormous. The other way to do that is with heavier material. So thicker and heavier material. So you could influence it that way as well. So additional moving mass means lower resonance frequency. But I think what a lot of them try to do is balance that out with upper treble extension as well, and presence. And so that's why there is this push, I think, for thinner and thinner diaphragms. And hi-fi man can get away with that because of how massive their diaphragms are. With other designs, like what you get with the DCA headphones, they don't have nearly the kind of space that you have with those hi-fi man headphones. And so the drivers here are much smaller. Similarly with the Odyssey ones, right? The drivers in the Odyssey ones are actually smaller than the hi-fi man ones as well. And that means that they have to make sure that they have good coupling on the side, so that they get the full bass extension. That's also why with Odyssey ones you have these really enormous pads. That's one of the reasons, at least, why you have the enormous pads. It's to help get that seal, right? That coupling to be good. And then that way you get the bass extension. Does that make sense? I'm gonna just quickly jump to Rob, or some of the super chats here. JE, thank you. Is the Hi-Fi Edition XS good enough to be considered a poor guy's aria? Yeah, I think so. It's closer to the Ananda in its tuning than the aria, and there are I'd actually say that in some respects the overall balance is there will like treble balance and upper mids is more forgiving on the Edition XS, where it's a bit forward in the arias. The aria is one where I only really consider it suitable for certain genres without EQ, whereas the Edition XS is a little more versatile, right? It's still probably best for jazz, classical, acoustic, and music with instruments and stuff like that, but it's not like it's bad for other genres. Whereas the aria, there are definitely some genres that are just like, nah, I'm not listening to that on the aria, like Meshuggah. I'm not listening to Meshuggah on the aria. Yeah. Rob, Thank you. Will you get a Chronicle Plus haircut? What is Chronicle Plus's haircut? I haven't seen it. Now I need to know. I saw him on a stream yesterday, and I didn't notice that he had a haircut. So was that like a new thing? He was on Switch and Click, I think, which was a fun stream to watch. I was an imposter in there. I don't think he even saw that I was there. I was on my Twitch account, which only Metal571 and Chronicle knows what it is. SA6 best closeback. So it's funny. I was doing some video editing not from the studio, but just from here at home. And yeah, I was rocking the SA6 just earlier today. And yesterday. So, yep, SA6. Like, it's funny because, like, if I think about, like, okay, there is such a thing as, like, endgame stuff out there, right? Like, you know, you could say Susvara, Utopia, you know, you could say LCD5, you could say Shangri-La Junior. I mean, there's obviously the crazy, ridiculous stuff, but, like, you get the idea, right? Like, Stacks, SR007 2.9s, right? There's stuff that I would consider endgame out there. And then there's stuff that, like, I just get so much enjoyment from that costs so much less. And, you know, the SA6 is one of those where it's just, like, it's just so right, you know, and it allows you to just, like, stop thinking about, you know, the gear and just you know, ignore gear and just get into the music again, which is and you know, in some ways, so this setup I have right now with the Alir with Utopia pads running off the 32 ohm out, so it is actually downward tilting it, of the Amps and Sound Kenzie. It's the same thing for me, right, where it's like, it is so good, like I can just, you know, yeah, and I know it's a tube amp, right, it's gonna have higher second, or, you know, higher harmonic distortion, which, even though I measured it and I couldn't find that, but, like, still, you know, it's a tube amp, right? And just that synergy, that combination out of the 32 ohm out, it's just magic. And yeah, it's not expensive. I mean, the amp is expensive, but this setup is not, you know, Susvara level endgame, but I have so much joy out of it. Yeah, you heard it here first. I do experience joy. Jeff, thanks. Thanks for the show. What are your thoughts on the shit Ragnarok 2 amplifier? Thinking about pairing with my Bifrost 2 DAC for speakers as well as cans. I don't have any thoughts on that, unfortunately. Shit is a brand where I have reached out, but they have not responded. And I think it's because it's one of those things where it's like, you just end up getting added to a pile of folks who want to review it. And yeah, so I don't, unfortunately, have experience with the Ragnarok 2. But, you know, I actually think that what they do, I love their marketing, you know, their kind of under the noise style marketing, you know, where they just give you sort of their like more casual, honest dialogue and descriptions about this stuff. So in some ways, I imagine that, like, if you were to just, like, ask them, what do you think about this combination, apart from the fact that they'd say they'd you know, want to sell you one, I imagine, they'd probably give you the better answer as to what would be suitable for your situation there. So yeah, but that's as best as I can really, an answer I can give you for that, unfortunately. I wish I had more to say about the shit audio stuff, but I do not. If I missed your question, guys, feel free to ask it again. I just have to get to some of the super chats. Ed A. Wolf, thank you. I just discovered HQ Player and its upsampling feature, similar to Chord M Scaler. Are you aware of it? No, I'm not, but I will check that out. Thank you for indicating that. The upsampling stuff is also something I haven't had a chance to get into, and I would like to. Chord is, I mean, yeah, the M Scaler, yes, would be interesting, but just chord stuff in general. The stuff that I've heard, it does feel like it's, you know, okay, for what it is and what it's doing, it's you know, quite expensive, right? Let's not mince words about that. But with that said, the times when I go, maybe there is something else going on here with amplifiers, it's typically from the Chord equipment. So, and the other thing too is that they're not using off-the-shelf DAC chips either. So it's hard to say what's actually responsible for that. Let's see. Have you tried the variations yet? Yes. And if so, how does it compare with the SA6 and the Audio Oracle? All right, so yeah, so the variations is very technical for the price. I'd say it is one of the most technical, if not the most, at that price. And it is a generally good tuning. However, I still find it shouty. But that's because, I find most of those generally good, normal, well-tuned Chi-Fi IEMs, I find them to be a little bit on the shouty side, apart from the SA6, right? And so for me, I would just take I know I would take the SA6 over the variations, even though, yeah, the variations is more technically impressive. And so not that long ago, actually, I was, for my daily IEM usage, I was rocking the variations with the Qdelix 5K, and I would just use the EQ function in the Qdelix 5K to kind of reduce that 2.7 or like 3, no, it's around 3K, the upper mids just a little bit there, by 2-3 dB. 2.5 maybe at most, and then it's just right on the money for me. So yeah, it is very good compared to the Oracle. The Oracle I find a little less shouty, but also not quite as technical, so that's kind of where the trade-off is there. All right, let me see if I can catch up a bit here. Which headphone company are you most excited about in terms of future releases and potential? So this past year was a massive year for Odyssey. And they've had a number of really enormous releases that are very well received by the community. Some more so than others. I thought the LC5 is very impressive, and it's very important for the industry. And I wasn't that enthusiastic about the Carbon, but I know a lot of people were. But then also the LCD-R that they did, a lot of people liked that one. Again, for me, that one was, it was okay. I mean, it was not as good as it just wasn't, I think it didn't live up to the hype that some people had put behind it. But as far as its price point was concerned, I think it was, it was okay. And I know people are doing all kinds of source memeing with that, and that's something I didn't get to do, right? So by all means, shift the goalposts around on the on stuff like the Carbon and the LCD-R, because I was very limited with the sources that I could try it with. I did not for the speaker amps and stuff like that for the because it was the shit Jot A, I think, and that's it. So I think that's what it's called. The Jot A, the one that comes with the LCD-R. So Odyssey kind of did their year last year. So in some ways, I would say, to answer your question, I would kind of say, as much as I'm always excited about what Odyssey's doing, I don't know if this is the year for them, because they just did their big year last year. Maybe they'll surprise me. But I have there's not anything that's immediately on the horizon that I'm aware of with Odyssey. But there are brands where you see it's been a long time since they've released something, and you think, yeah, they're probably working on something. I wonder what it could be. And for me, those brands are, to a certain extent, I'm very curious to see what Sennheiser is doing, whether it's this year or next year, but they haven't released a flagship headphone in a while, and I'm just very curious if that's even something that the new ownership wants to do of the consumer headphone division, our consumer audio division. But if they do, I'm very curious what that could potentially end up as. What else? Dunu is always a company that they're one of the, if you think about the three key IEM brands, I don't want to say in total, but maybe the key Chi-Fi IEM brands that have really done a lot in North America, or are doing a lot in North America as well. Where there's a collective sort of groundswell behind them from everyone in this audience as well. It's Moondrop, it's The Audio, and it's Dunu. Those, at least in my mind, right? I'm sure there's another one that I'm forgetting. But those are the three big ones that I have my eye on. For basically anything that they do, I want to listen to it. What else? You know what else I would be I'm curious about is if Final Audio decides to release another high end thing. Very curious about that. They've what they've done from their like engineering standpoint is just very interesting. They're one of the few brands that was actually willing to, as we were talking about earlier with the resonance frequency, they were actually willing to kind of explore the idea of a controlled leak in their open back designs. And the benefit there was that it didn't matter if you wore glasses or had a perfect seal, right? And they were one of the few that were like, yeah, we're doing that intentionally, which was cool. So I'm curious if they were. I don't know if they'll do another high end one this year or next year or soon even, but yeah, it'd be very cool. Okay. Don't forget to review the MDR 7506. Yeah, that's on my radar. I have to do that. Sussy wussy resolve. What the hell? What does that even mean? Is the LCD2F worth it in 2022? I'm looking for a used 2014 version. I would just get the 2021 revision of the LCD-X. Or, I mean, yeah, LCD2F as well, but I haven't tried that one. But I think it's worth it. But I would not buy a used one. Unless you know specifically the frequency response of that used one, because it's a crapshoot, you know, like with all the different revisions that they've had, memory foam pads, you know, whatever else, right? So you need to be up on what the revisions were, I would say, to be buying it used, because they are very, very different from one another. If you're buying new, though, make sure that it's from somewhere that has the 2021 revisions, whether it's the non-memory foam ones, whether it's the LCD2F or the LCD-X, because those are much better than the memory foam ones. Best cans for jazz under 2K. There's an argument for the Sennheiser HD800S. Now somebody's going to crucify me for that, but just a little bit of EQ there. Otherwise, Hi-Fi-Man Aria is good for jazz. Is it the best though under 2K? So, see, I think if you're getting into jazz, that style of music, it's got a lot of instruments that are very where you want extra clarity for them, right? Like the recordings, if you listen to something super warm, the jazz stuff can kind of muddy a little bit. So I tend to focus on things that they're not brighter, but that they're not relaxed, right? They have they have the right amount of upper mids and ear gain, right? They have presence there, sometimes called the presence region. So anywhere from like basically you want 3K to be sufficiently high, and then the balance for the treble to be good for the rest of that as well. Best under 2K. Yeah, I mean, I think there is an argument for the Aria. Yep. Otherwise, man. Yeah, I'd say HD100S or Aria. See if you can try them side by side for jazz. How is the Sony XM4 soundstage? It's not. I mean, it's fine. It's a closed back. Yeah, I guess because it has that mid-range dip, right? It's probably that effect is enhanced a little bit. But yeah, it's XM4. Actually, I want to try the XM4 with a new firmware. Apparently, that improved the ridiculousness in the bass. But yeah. Don't know if this was asked before, but will you be looking at the new Sony open back earphones? Earphones? They've open back earphones? I didn't even know about that. Oh, somebody says Link Buds? They're closed. Yeah, I it's not on my radar, but I would like to. Let's see. You got a new headband yet for the LCD5? No. Makes it so I can't use it. I need to reach out to them, the folks at Odyssey. I was kind of hoping that I'll just be able to evaluate another one, just to double check on the unit variation and stuff like that, but that has not materialized yet. So Sadly. But then, yeah, I was also hoping to evaluate with the other headband. Well, if I have to, I will send my DT770 up there too. Yeah, we'll have to pay for shipping on that one. Let's connect on that, and I will figure out a label. Your thoughts on Foo Fighters as a band, specifically because of the unexpected passing of the drummer Taylor Hawkins. I did not know that. I've never been a fan of Foo Fighters, but I do very much respect Dave Grohl. So I'm going to get also attacked for this, I'm sure, but I think that, okay, I really, really dislike Nirvana. And I think that Nirvana kind of ruined music. Not Nirvana specifically, but the idea of Nirvana, what that meant, what that band meant, which was, the idea that like you didn't actually have to be a particularly good musician. You didn't actually have to know anything about music to write a compelling song, or to be effective at songwriting. And it's I mean that idea I guess isn't new with them, but it was very much like that kind of grunge style, I guess, that was popularized in the 90s, and to a lesser extent the early 2000s. That style, I think, was just a net negative to music as a whole. Now, with that said, though, I have immense respect for Dave Grohl. I think Dave Grohl, he's a smart guy, and what he does is generally very interesting. But with that in mind, it's not my kind of music. It really isn't. Like, in some ways, I liked Dave Grohl's... When Dave Grohl was doing stuff with Queens of the Stone Age, that was more my kind of thing than Foo Fighters. But if I hear Foo Fighters song, I'll at least be like, oh yeah, okay, I won't be like, this sucks, but like it's fine. Whereas if it were a Nirvana song, I would be like, no, I'm not. I'm turning that off. Oh, which headphone companies are you most excited about in terms of future releases and potential? I answered that, I think, right? I said Sennheiser and Dunu, and I can't remember what the other one was. I guess ZMF to a certain extent, but yeah, no, Sennheiser and Dunu probably might be my picks there. Only because I know that from last year's major releases, what headphones came out. So Identify DMS SRW. Oh, you just... What is this? What are you talking about? Oh, for endgame headphones? I see. Top. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat here, guys. Ede, thank you. Can current IEMs rival full-sized headphones? It's one of those where it's like, I mentioned, I randomly made this analogy in a different context on Twitter not long ago. But like the old idea from Logic class that's all German Shepherds are dogs, but not all dogs are German Shepherds. I think it's like that as well with this, right? Where some IEMs are better than some full-size headphones, but there are also full-size headphones that are better than all of those IEMs, right? So I don't think it's as simple as I don't think it's as simple as saying, all open, all over-ear headphones are going to be better than all IEMs. I don't think that's right. In fact, I know that that's not right. But if you're thinking of maybe a more apples to apples comparison, the best IEMs, are they as good as the best full-sized headphones? The answer is no. Having heard what I considered to be the best of both, except for the HE1 or whatever. Like having heard, and Corinne likes it, but I haven't heard it. So, but I've heard IEMs that I would consider, the best, or at least in that conversation. I think I still need to hear some of the Elysian Annihilator and stuff like that, but we're talking about like very high end stuff here, and I don't think that they are as good. But of course, you can get IEMs that cost $500 that sound way better than headphones that cost $1,500. Not all headphones that cost $1,500, but some headphones that cost $1,500, right? That's just the thing, is that like there might be, like, if you did like a scatter plot analysis of price and performance and that where different headphones fell on it, there might be like a trend there of the higher priced headphones being better. And so maybe we could say that there's a necessary condition, right? High price tag is a necessary condition for great sound, but it certainly is not a sufficient one, right? Just because it costs a lot of money, that does not mean that it is going to be great. Laughs listening to black metal. You haven't heard their Unplugged album. There's more going on there than you think. So here's the thing. You're talking about Nirvana or are you talking about Foo Fighters? When you listen to... Okay. It's not specifically the music itself. It's more what the music stands for. It's the idea behind the music. And to illustrate this point, if you listen to Nirvana, I highly recommend checking out, and maybe even the Unplugged stuff. I highly recommend checking out the Bad Plus version of Smells Like Teen Spirit. And that kind of like what they're doing is they've done this composition of the song in a way where you can tell they're making fun of it, and they're making fun of that idea. And what they're doing with it is so much more sophisticated and interesting, conceptually than what those songs actually are. And so if I think about what if we take our collective headspace and put it in that direction, the direction that music takes you, I just feel that it's the opposite of where we should be going. But that's also, I'm into, I like jazz, and I like stuff that is, maybe a little bit less about garage band rock, people who are into garage band rock, then that's different. It's not to say that the garage band rock is bad. It's just that the popularization of that style and, the ideas behind that are ideas that, to me, they just detract from music as a whole. Yeah, that's laughs listening to black metal. I'll say black metal is also really bad. That's not to say that I haven't listened to my fair share of Dimmu Borgir and Emperor. I draw the line at Immortal. Isan is interesting. Fernando, thank you. Did I miss any of the super chats here? I'll make sure I got them all. I think so. Desktop amp DAC recommendation for rock music. I have the HD100S and the Focal Clear. Yeah, so I'm gonna say, I'd almost say go for a tube amp. But yeah, okay. So I'm gonna tell you, get the cheap. If you don't have a desktop amp DAC set up already, get one of those good enough options, right? That you can get them for inexpensive, for $400-$500. There's all kinds of, there's good combos, like there's the JDS Element stuff. There's, to a certain extent, I'm going to say it's fine to go for those, the Modius Magnius stack, that kind of stuff. You don't need a lot of power for the Clear, right? You don't need any power for the Clear, really. So even the Modi Magni stack would be fine. But if you want to explore some more, the audiophile world a bit, I'm going to recommend the Amps and Sound Kenzie 8 and 100 ohm because 32 is going to be too much for the clear, and that impedance bump is going to make it way too bassy. But the lower impedance version is actually going to be okay, and I think that'll sound really good. And then the 100 ohm out is actually kind of around where you would want, for the HG100S, it's around where you would want that. So yeah, I'm gonna say Kenzie. And for the DAC, yeah, it doesn't. I mean, like you can go for I'm currently rocking the Matrix X Saber Pro, which is very expensive, but you don't need to do that. You can go for LAQXD1, you can go for SU9, you can go. I'm sure there's stuff from SMSL that all sounds basically the same. So, yeah, I mean that's, but good, right? The same but good. Yeah. The U12T is more revolving than the Hi-Fi Man Aria, according to some hardcore audiophiles. According to some hardcore audiophiles. Am I a hardcore audiophile? I don't know. Probably. Yeah, okay. Well, who am I kidding? No, I think that question of what is more resolving is one that, like, nobody has anything to anchor anything to, right? Unfortunately. So there's like a collective kind of like consciousness of people who, let's say, I trust to know what stuff is supposed to sound like, but that might be like, their attention might be going to completely different things from what another group is, and so that's why this is such a difficult hobby. Is there's nothing anchors where, nothing says your attention must go to this particular aspect of the sound quality, and that everybody's is necessarily going to go to that same spot. So having those conversations, you end up like coming at an impasse, right? This is why in that audiophile term video, the conclusion was basically Wittgenstein, because it's the private language argument with a private language problem. I mean, it played out in real life, like I don't know what somebody else means when they say detail. I don't know if that means what I say when I say. I know that in many cases it's not. So that's really the problem. But I do have some sense of that like what we're dealing with as far as like some of these like technicalities question. Like, okay, I'll need to do a video about this at some point. But like that whole debate about like objectivist, subjectivist, like that thing, it just needs to stop because it's stupid. Like and let's call it an audiophile, one of the, like a hardcore audiophile, like you mentioned. They're going to describe something as being, like they'll say, the Aeon 2 or Noir, right? Very, very detailed. It's very spacious. It's whatever, right? All these subjective qualia terms, right? That they're not really anchored to anything in particular. And the objectivist is going to go, where is detail? Show me detail. Where on the graph is detail? Or where, what is this that you're talking about? And here's the problem, right? Like, even the idea that, okay, detail is just frequency response, even that is wrong. Right? Detail is just, at most, always a description of an experience. And that experience could be related to an acoustic property, but it could also be related to how that person was feeling that morning. Right? So like, because it's a description of an experience, it is not a like the term veridical, it's not something you can actually verify by looking at a graph or an acoustic property. So I think another way to say this, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are talking about, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not talking about the same thing, right? So if we're analyzing something in terms of frequency response, we're typically analyzing it with, target adherence. We're looking at a frequency response relative to a target there on a graph. And we're able to say, okay, there's more bass here. There's more, like the mid-range is forward at 1K. This is going to sound honky, right? Or the mid-range is forward at 3K. It's going to sound shouty, or it's going to be bright, right? These are all technically subjective terms as well. But those terms are anchored to specific things that they could evaluate in relation to, namely a target, right? Or like a graph, right, with the target there. Things like detail and speed and all that stuff, you could theoretically come up with some way of like, maybe you could say this is closer to an HRTF and therefore it sounds more detailed. But nobody's doing that, right? and when they're saying that this is fast and detailed and separated and all that, nobody is trying to make that jump, right, from honky or shouty as a way of evaluating a coarse frequency response against a coarse grained target to super detailed, incisive, and depth and all this other stuff with frequency response. It just isn't happening. So and maybe one day we will, and that's something that I'm currently working on, right? But that's why these conversations about this is more resolving and that's more resolving, that at the moment there's nothing that really anchors that. We can't actually get to a conclusion on that. But as I said, subjectivists and objectivists, this is not this is not like atheists versus religion. That's a really crude analogy. This is more like dualism, right? This is more like substance dualism. Like there's two ways of describing, or this gets weirdly philosophical and metaphysical, but like dualism stopped being a thing once we were able to analyze mind in terms of extension. So we were analyze mental properties in terms of physical things, chemical things going on. So there's no, basically, that problem went away. And I think that's probably going to happen with this stuff as well. It's just that right now we can't, there's nothing to anchor it there yet. So eventually, rather than describing an experience, when we say this is more detailed or more resolving or whatever, eventually, we will be able to predict that. We'll be able to point to it on a graph and say, at least ideally, and say, this is more detailed than that. But at the moment, you can't do that. Sorry, that was a tangent and a rant. But I need to do a video on this because it is such a problem. People talking past each other when they're really they're not describing things that are all that different, right? They're not. It's just it's two different ways of coming at the same thing. We're sort of setting things up so that there's a fight happening there, but there really needn't be. Instealer, wait, did I miss one? I'm gonna currently rocking some arias, but I might be missing the slam experience. Deciding between the Focal Clear MG and the original clears. I see conflicting opinions about the two. What do you think? Yeah, I mean, I preferred the original clear with the way that the tonal balance is there. I find that the balance between so I can understand why they tried to make the clear MG and what they were going for with that, because it is smoother in the mid treble, for sure. And that's one of the key things that I think a lot of people are nitpicking with the clear. If you watch Theo's review of the clear on this channel, he makes that point very well. That there's in the mid treble there's a little bit of that sort of it's almost like a kind of grittiness, and in the clear MG they smooth that out. But I still think that if you zoom out a little bit, the overall level for lower treble, mid treble, and upper treble is better on the clear than it is on the MG. Or at least to me, it's like I know some people, they like that extra upper treble air, but for me, and I guess my age, I found that I just preferred the focus of the original. And then as far as the slam quality is concerned, I still think the original clear is perfectly fine. I don't think that there's any any benefit really to the clear MG, because on the ones that I evaluated, actually, if I remember correctly, the clear MG just had more bass overall, but that's also because the clear that I had happened to have less than I think other clears did. So, yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a conclusive answer there on that one. But if it were me, it would probably still be the original clear. Rod, thank you. Am I leaving any sonic performance on the table by not upgrading my Magni Modi stack? I'm running an Aria V3. If so, I don't know about the Gustard. Sorry, I can't answer that one. RME, ADI, or other. Okay. The first thing I'm going to tell you is do not base any DAC and amp upgrade decisions on that Synad ranking or Synad score. We did a video on that. That is junk. But if you are going to look at DAC and amp measurements, it is worth going through and actually looking at the rest of the data there, because that could tell you if an amplifier or if a source's distortion is high order or not. If it's high order, and I mean, generally speaking, this stuff is all way below the audible threshold. But yeah, if there's IMD, intermodulation distortion issues or high order harmonic products, yeah, then that's something to pay attention to. But for the most part, that's not stuff that you need to worry about. So don't think that by upgrading to a better scoring, source, over a Magni Modi stack, a better ranking, source is going to sound better, because it won't sound. I mean, it's not going to sound any different, or at least not because of that. The only thing I could think of there would be like I don't think you need more power for that either. But I could see a reason to prefer the Aria V3 off of, I don't know, running something balanced for one reason or another. I could see a reason to do that. You got a lot more flexibility with headroom. Plus, so you can, if you want to EQ stuff, you could do that. You can add a bass shelf, and you get a lot more flexibility with volume. But really, I don't think you're missing that much. If it were me, I'm just trying to think what I would get as an amplifier combo for that. I mean, I do like the Rebel amp, but I think the Rebel amp also, like, its only downside really is it's huge, and it also doesn't really have that much power. But it's probably enough. I mean, we're talking a watt here, so it's probably enough for the Aria. So that might be something to explore. Other than that, yeah, I mean, really the only other upgrade for solid state stuff, at least it's worth considering there is, I mean, do you want to go with something like a balanced setup, or do you want to go with some of the functions of the RME ADI, right? Like, it has all that EQ stuff. That would be the reason to do that, I think. But otherwise, it's tough. I need to try that Ferrum Ore stuff, like the Ferrum amps and things like that, because I tried them at CanJam, but I didn't actually, it's like a show environment, right? And we have one somewhere in the, I think actually my boss is using it right now, but so it is on my radar to try, but I think those are the ones that people are talking about right now. I don't know if you need to do that, is what I'm saying. Yeah, tough to say. To end, like, the way you worded that, are you leaving any sonic performance on the table? I think what remains there for sonic performance that's on the table is all to do with what your preferences are and what sort of the subjective goals are of your system there. If it is, to achieve sound quality that is, excellent measurements, right? Well, then your amplifier setup is fine. But if you're trying to create art at the eardrum, let's say, and then it's totally fine to have, tube amps and things like that as well. So yeah, it really depends on what your goals are. All right. Transient response usually means impulse response, which is just frequency response using the time. So actually, I think no. I think that's. I mean, people might think that it means that, and but their attribution is probably wrong, because we know that impulse response and CSD is it's just frequency response viewed in the time domain. And interestingly, that whatever's like the decay things that you see there are not just proportional to frequency response, but also predictable from frequency response, which is the interesting one, as long as there's no weird non-linearities going on with the driver, which sometimes does happen, but like it's rare. But I think that when people use the term transient response, they're actually co-opting a term from music production and just audio engineering in general, audio production. Not like products and equipment, but like sorry, phone is doing crazy things. But like, yeah, like the engineering side of things. I expect that term has just been now co-opted and brought into the audiophile space to describe a similar thing. But I actually think that transient response, probably just frequency response. It's probably just like so, for example, something that sounds fast, maybe it's just perfectly flat linear bass. Maybe that's all that is with the relationship between, for that and the rest of the frequency response. Now, I don't know that, and I can't verify that, and I am trying to figure that out, but I don't. At the very least, it's not in the time domain stuff, or like the descriptions of the experience that is fast transient response. That's really what I'm getting at. That stuff's not attached to any unique measurement that isn't frequency response, as far as I'm aware. Even if people might be making that attribution, I just think that's wrong. I couldn't connect with Nirvana until I heard the Unplugged album. Then I went back to their studio stuff, and with renewed appreciation. Basically, I didn't understand them at first. I mean, yeah, I don't think. I mean, this is just we might just agree to disagree on this, but I don't think there's all that much to understand. Seriously, some people might hate this, but most people are familiar with that music, and I would say listen to the Bad Plus version of Smells Like Teen Spirit to give yourself kind of a perspective on that, more like as a musical statement. But the idea that Nirvana was somehow this amazing musical act, no, I can't do it. Telling people detail or impact isn't a thing is dumb. Just let them enjoy the experience. If they think it sounds good, who cares? Exactly, right? And that's why, like, when I get in those mud flinging debates on Reddit or wherever else about this, it just feels so dumb, because it's like at no point, at least from the conversations that I've seen, at no point are people pretending that there's magic like they're like, oh yeah, here's the detail slider, there's a lot of the detail slider going on in these headphones, like that. Nobody's doing that. I mean, maybe it has to do with like the way that we describe products, the way we describe headphones and products. Like we say, rather than saying the experience I get is very detailed, right? The music sounds very detailed to me. We say things like, this is very detailed, and maybe that's where some of that, it's a semantic confusion issue. But yeah, it is frustrating. All right, let's see. Yeah, I'm very picky about my music choices, which is why I'm into headphones. Hot take: the only descriptions that matter is bass, mids, treble, and soundstage. I wouldn't say that's a hot take. I would say that's a bad take. I'm just kidding. I understand why you're saying that, though. Yeah, things like texture, decay. I know what you mean, right? I mean, I've made these descriptions before because they are descriptions of the experience, but in so many ways, because people have different ways of, like, what I was talking about before, like, attention may go to totally different things. When I say, oh, this is the texture here is whatever, it doesn't mean it that other people are going to have that experience. Whereas talking about bass, mids, treble, they will have that. That will make sense. So yeah, I get what you're saying. Even though I'd still go as far as to say that the other things do matter. Like it matters that you're able to give a subjective description of the experience, because that, like, well, there's a strategic and practical reason to do that, because I would say a significant portion of my audience and the audience of this channel isn't at all interested in the measurement stuff, right? They don't care, and some, maybe they learned about it, they know about it, and they're just like, I'm not interested in that. But I think the larger group is like, I don't want to learn about that. That is scary, and I don't like that. So if you're going to do an evaluation for those people, you might as well just describe what it sounds like. You might as well give a description of the subjective experience. Now, I don't think that those are necessarily different from the objective stuff, right? It's just that you can do more in the subjective descriptions at the moment than you can with the objective stuff, because you can talk about things that, you know, like you can give descriptions of the way your music sounds. An objective like frequency response graph, I mean, yeah, it can sort of do that, but it's fairly limited, I think. Okay. You a gamer? You a gamer, bro? I used to be. I don't know. It's a weird term. All right. Let's catch up here, guys. I realize the issue is that I go on these tangents and rants, which is fun, but then I miss a lot of the questions, so I have to catch up. To add to that, it basically is a combination of the attack and delay properties of headphone. What are you talking about? Like attack and decay properties of the headphone. Yeah, but the problem is that those properties, like those are like attack and decay, transient response. That we should think of that, and maybe this is the problem. We should think of that as descriptions of the experience. We should not think of that as, you know, acoustic properties of the headphone, because CSD in almost all cases in headphones, because headphones are minimum phase devices, it doesn't matter. As I was saying before, you know, the decay, what you're saying there about decay, that's predictable from frequency response. You can look at a frequency response and calculate what the decay is going to be for a given peak, for example, given the headphones are minimum phase. What is your thoughts on op-amp rolling, such as the Burson line? I haven't gotten into that, but it's a good question. I'd like to try that one day. I have no idea if that's if that's going to mean. The problem with that, though, is like you'd need to have two units, one of them with the stock ones and then one with the different ones, right? Then you make the, you know, and even still unplugging and plugging it back in, auditory memory is pretty bad. Good detail means low distortion. No, no, stop. There's so many articles that are basically pointing to distortion not being like, you'll be shocked at how high level the distortion is before you can hear it. And as an example, so I'm not going to tell you what specific products these were, but I was recently measuring a pair of headphones, a very high-end pair of headphones, and I was running it off of a tube amplifier that had ridiculously high second-order harmonic distortion, or second harmonic, and like so high that there's no way it wasn't audible. And it was to the point where when I was running my test tone, right, I was running my sine sweep at like 90 dB or whatever it was, from the out of an open back headphone, from the outside of the headphone, I was sitting there and I was like, I'm pretty sure that headphone has high distortion. I'm pretty sure it does. Like, because I could hear the distortion going on. I was like, yeah, that's going to be, it's going to show up as high second harmonic distortion. Now, when I looked at the graph afterwards and looked at where the level of distortion was, yes, it was high. It was all second harmonic distortion. All there's a frequency response, and then like not that far below is where the second harmonic distortion is. And when I listened to the headphone, it was just as ridiculously detailed as it was off of the solid state amplifier. And it's a very high-end headphone I'm talking about here. It was just as, I mean, on its own, the headphone doesn't have super high harmonic distortion or anything like that. But the fact that it's not the lowest, but it's yeah. But the fact that I put it on a source that meaningfully increased the second harmonic distortion, and it didn't have any negative impact or influence on the detail. Like, it was still ridiculously detailed. That on its own should indicate that, like, it's not, you know, distortion is not, the absence of distortion is not detail, or detail is not the absence of distortion. What the hell? There's an emergency alert going on. Sorry, I'm just going to mute this. Oh, there we go.
Fort St. John RCMP have issued an Amber Alert.
Amber Alert, Fort St. John. Oh my god. All All right, so that's there's an Amber Alert going on in my province right now. Interesting. Sorry about that, guys. Can we have a rant stream? Yeah, that's what these sort of turn into. I mean, I was thinking actually I should do like a regular purchase advice. Wait, can you guys still hear me? Yeah. I was thinking about just doing like one stream that's like all purchase advice, one stream that's more like focused on specific subjects. Because it is, I mean, as this chat and this discussion has sort of like indicated, there's a lot of stuff that is not common in the public consciousness about things, right? It's not commonly understood. Like, for example, the distortion thing. I think actually a lot of people will look at, there's sort of a default there when they're looking at like, ASR, they're looking at anybody who publishes, the harmonic distortion for headphones, and they'll think that, lower distortion equals better, right? And it does, theoretically, right? But it does not, even if you haven't read the all the different papers, like the one from Steve Tam and Sean Oliver, the Gedley paper, the stuff about distortion not being predictable for listener preference, you can still look at examples of headphones that are subjectively ridiculous, like really well received for their detail, where they have higher harmonic distortion than other headphones that are nowhere near as well received. So even that on its own, you just do a simple category analysis. We say this is your category of of headphones that are subjectively well received, and then here's your category of or within that you can say, okay, which ones have high distortion, which ones have low distortions, and you won't find a trend. That's the problem. And then this is why I say, if you are looking for, if anybody is like going down the rabbit hole and trying to find things like detail, soundstage, even transient response, the attack decay stuff, look at frequency response. Don't look at distortion. I mean, as long as it's not awful, right? Like, that's the thing. Kryn and I were saying the same thing. Kryn did the video as well about, like we both did the iceberg video, like as a total random coincidence that it was at the same time. But and he did message me ahead of time being like, damn, we were releasing the same video. But yeah, we're both basically said the same things, that like it's don't look at distortion, don't bother with CSD unless it's awful, right? That's the thing. If it's awful, then yeah, obviously that matters. But like you for the most part you won't hear it. And obviously CSD is just frequency response. So that's why I say just look at frequency response and see what we can find there. If there is, now I'm leaving the door open here to maybe there is the property of a transducer, like something that we are not currently measuring, maybe, right? But there's so much in frequency response that we have yet to understand to make it predictive of sound quality. The target adherence and the Harman target and all that stuff, as much as I love it and use it all the time, that's not, I mean, that might be the default way that we view, frequency response, but that is not exhaustive of what frequency response is. I hate what? Yeah, the YouTube police is coming. Oh God, I'm so sorry for that. Rob, thank you. Which is more enjoyable to you, Sandara or SA6? Okay, that's a tough question. So I'm gonna say SA6 only because I can take it to more places. I think for like overall sound quality, maybe Sandara, right? Like maybe that, with an amplifier. But like, I think as a product, like for what it does, like, because I can go, these days I'm often a little bit more all over the place, and so I have an easier time with the I would have an easier time with the SA6. Have you studied the concepts like frequency response, minimum phase, distortion, etc. magnetically? What do you mean by magnetically? like with magnets. Like this, here's the thing though too. Like what I'm saying to you guys about frequency response being the key metric to focus on for the moment, and not to worry about distortion or CSD and that stuff. That's not just me saying this, okay? That's not based on my experience or anything. There are the reason I'm saying this is because of the enormous body of research and work that exists out there. And you can, and like, yes, I'm testing headphones, I'm measuring headphones, and I'm discovering this as well. I'm going through the stages of learning this stuff. But like, you can get a subscription to Audio Engineering Society and just read some of those papers, you know? Have you addressed Crin's latest video? What was Crin's latest video? Let me just check that out. I have not seen it. Let me find out. Chronicle. Why does it go to his old account? Alright. You've been fooled. The truth about As the Artist Intended. Ah, yes, I love this video. I thought this was good. I've always been against. I've always hated the As the Artist Intended concept, but for different reasons actually. And I did watch that video. I thought you were saying he did a different one. And the reason the As the Artist Intended thing, at least from my point of view, is kind of junk. Is that why should you care how the artist wanted it to sound? Why shouldn't you just want it to sound the way you want it to sound? Like, to me, that's the most basic. Like, yeah, maybe there's like I'm pretty sure that, you know, Sean Olive would disagree with this statement, but like, I think it's perfectly fine to create art at your eardrum. Art doesn't need to be uniquely located in the recording. And so for that reason, who gives a shit? Like, you know what is. There's all kinds of times when the artist might also, you know, they might want something to sound a certain way, and you might go, that sounds terrible. I don't like that. Again, black metal, for example. Should we really be listening to stuff as the artist is intended? Artists have all kinds of crazy ideas about how stuff should sound. In some cases, they might have a very specific and good, you know, and you might be like, that's how I want that to sound, you know, but yeah. You'll never know what the artist intended. Yeah, but so my point is that even if you did know what the artist intended, like, who cares? Why? Zeb, thank you. Would you choose the Stelia or OG Clear for sound quality? Stelia is way bassier, so if you want lots of bass, Stelia. OG Clear is a bit more balanced, and so if you, but also maybe a little bit more peaky in the treble. So I'd say make your decision on whether or not open or closed is what you're after. But I'm gonna, yeah, like, if you can have an open back situation and you can afford the Stelia, see if you can get a Utopia. That's sort of where I would go with that. But obviously, yeah, I think the Clear is probably what I would do there if I didn't need a close back. How do you use frequency response to measure trailing ends of tones? Aha, so actually you can, I think. Potentially. And I think it is, this is where I think it, if anything, this is where Sean and Olive and I have somewhat of a disagreement. It and it gets very deep into the weeds, but basically because sound is, okay. My critique of the Harman target, one of my critiques in that video that I did recently, was that the target is highly smoothed and the frequency response is not. So basically the criticism was the target is not fine-grained enough to accommodate the more fine-grained elements of an average HRTF, right? So we don't know what those fine-grained elements should be. And I suspect that something like trailing ends of tones, the things that are, you know, part of the experience, trailing ends of tones, I suspect that that's in HRTF matching, or like the more fine-grained elements of HRTF, that if they get closer, you're going to have a better time with that. I suspect that, like, or at the very least, that's worth looking for that. because the, you hear stuff that's like super blunted and dull sounding, like the Drop Panda, for example. It's one that doesn't really like it. It's not obvious in frequency response where that problem is. But I think you can do the flip side and go, this is more detailed than that for that quality. And you look at the frequency response and go, actually, this is not as smoothed as what you get in Harman. And so it might be because of that. So getting back to what I was saying there about the target being highly smoothed, his reasoning for thinking that this is, as far as I understand, right? His reasoning for thinking that it's okay that the target is highly smooth and that it's not, fine grained enough, is because it has to do with it has to do with the direction specific element to the whole thing. So basically, you could get like totally different HRTF depending on the direction. So, I'm probably butchering the explanation here because it's very complicated, but you could. So, with that in mind, the more the more of those the more directions you take from your HRTF, the more directions you find. Essentially, the more it looks like the smooth line there above 5K, or you see it this way. Now, my problem with that is that the same is true for 3K. The same is true for other elements of the ear gain. And I'm not sure, maybe he's watching this and he'll have a good answer for this. But if you look at basically what happens with different directions for the HRTF, it's not like those features go away. They just shift slightly. They shift to different places, and those are also unique to every individual, the ways in which they shift. And this was demonstrated recently to me by Blaine. Like he showed me some examples where yeah, okay, it actually does shift. And so the contention that I have here is just because they sort of average out, right? It doesn't, like when you have more than one direction, that doesn't mean that we should just eliminate those pieces of the ear gain. Or just ignore them, basically. It doesn't mean that we should just ignore them, because we don't do that with the lower elements of the ear gain as well. So that's really that's a butchered explanation of a very deep subject, but it's one that I think it's worth further Harman research to explore. Like the next level of the research, I would love for them to explore that, to say, what if we went for what if we tried to, instead of going for a mean average and smoothing it, basically, we go for a median or mode average and use a more detailed, like more fine-grained HRTF for the target. And it's essentially what we were like in that video on the different stages of reading headphone measurements. That's basically what that final critique was of the Harman research. And you can see an example of that, right? Where we basically take the Kemar HRTF, DF HRTF, and then free field HRTF, and then we apply the Harman tilt to it. And it's not anything right now, but like it's a concept, it's an idea, right? It's like here's what a target could look like, that was more fine grained or more, that wasn't smooth enough or wasn't so smooth. I imagine that if you had the HRTFs measured from a wider range of actual people and individuals, you would probably come up with a better result, or a more accurate result there. But the idea of ignoring those features above 5K, because they sort of average out when you change the position or change the direction of sound. That's basically the thing that I'm not on board with. Sorry, that's another tangent. I don't know if anybody's really into that, but maybe somebody is. Surav, you meant the mathematics behind it, not magnetically. Yeah, of course. You're talking about like Fourier and stuff like that. So that's more stuff that I need to have further conversations about that. Let's see. You guys just talking about the head-to-phone as a gym headphone. It's ridiculous. Interesting comments here I'm seeing here. I think the idea is that we'd like to hear it the way the artist did. You're talking about the artist intended thing, because they had a unique perspective to make it anyways. However, it's probably impossible to hear it that way, right? No, well, I think there's also the question of if the artist was able to achieve what they were like with the engineer and the record, like when they were doing the recording, if the result actually was what they wanted it to be. Yeah, I don't think that matters. Like, that's maybe my hot take, I guess, on that subject. Like, I don't care what, I'm just thinking of, trying to think of a specific artist, but pick I don't care what a given artist necessarily, intends. If I think it sounds better with a bass shelf, for example, right, or with less, I don't know, you get what I mean, right? Like, it's also not really the artist's job to, determine how best their stuff sounds. It's more the engineer's job. I think that's partially what Kryn was getting at in his video. And in that sense, I think Kryn's video is right. I think I would have those same critiques. But really, it's more that I just don't care what the artist intends, because, it's a similar kind of idea to, So there was this movement a while ago in the academic world that was about the question, basically better understanding the question of authorship and whether authorship should matter. This was, I think, for like, literary works and stuff like that. And the general outcome of that academically, at least this is something that at the time I think I actually kind of fought against, but the outcome of that most people tended to go for there was that the artist, or the author, it didn't matter what the author's intention was, because you could get something that was totally different out of the work that the author had never intended in the first place, and it could be better, right? Or more, it could resonate more with you. And I think by and large that's true. I have somewhat of an issue with that when we're talking about, technical writing. I have a very strong issue with that. We're talking about technical writing, but with works of literature and whatever and all that stuff, I think that's kind of the point. Is that you can when you're reading something and you're say you're watching a movie or whatever, right? The way you feel about that, like that can have so much more to do with the framing effects for you than what necessarily the author or the artist or the filmmaker intended. Now, within reason, I think that needs to be sort of caveated a little bit. Within reason, like it's worth it to not ignore what the artist intended, but at the same time, art at the eardrum is fine. Like creating art as a result of combinations of equipment, I think is fine. If you like it, right? If you prefer it, that's sort of the bottom line. SA6, a good upgrade from the Kato? I would, yes. All right. I see Sam, thank you. The Focal Clear is my in-game headphone, but the pads touch the top/bottom of my ears. This gets annoying in about 5 minutes. Are you aware of any pads that could remedy this, or should I move on? No, I'm not aware. Because the thing with the pads is... Do I have? Okay, yeah. The thing with the pads is that they're all sort of mounted on this ring. And this means that you're inevitably, inevitably you're going to end up with that same geometry for the pads. For top and bottom. I don't think there's anything that like widens that or opens it up. If you find it really annoying, because like I wear these, I have big ears, I don't really find it annoying, but sure, if you find that an issue, I would go with maybe one of the Hi-Fi Man headphones that have like the egg-shaped thing, Edition XS, Aria, Ananda, that kind of thing, to a lesser extent, these are designed in a similar way. These DCAs, the Noir, they have the bottom part here is a lot longer, right? So you might have an easier time with that. For me, the only weirdness with these ones, the comfort issue, is the pad on the front. Sometimes like it has this weird, like the way that it clamps is kind of weird on me, but I think for I have a big head, so I think for most people it's probably fine. Michael, thank you. Always enjoy these casual Q&A chats. Thanks. You're very welcome. I think I turned a lot of people away from my comments about not liking Nirvana. But that's the thing, right? Some people like people like all kinds of stuff, right? Like I like jazz, acoustic music with instruments, flamenco, Latin jazz, that kind of stuff. And other people like hip hop, so it's I know lots of people who like EDM. I don't. I hate EDM, but I'm not gonna get up on a high horse about be a music elitist. Like every genre can be enjoyed better with stuff. Like every genre can have you can listen to it on a crap pair of speakers. And it's not going to sound as good as if you listen to it on a good pair of speakers, for example. It doesn't, and the enjoyment that you get from it sounding better isn't uniquely tied to one genre or another. I mean, that's something I would be interested in exploring, but at the moment, it's not a soapbox that I'm going to get on, right? Like, maybe there is something to be said about, serious audiophile music, but it's not. I don't think there's anything wrong with people buying high-end headphones for EDM or hip-hop because they like that stuff, right? Who cares? Like, I know a lot, like, I would say most people don't like jazz. It's an acquired taste. What frequency should I... Thank you, Leonard. What frequency should I EQ... or Leonardo, sorry, I got that wrong. Should I EQ to make headphones sound a little less honky or shouty with female vocals? All right, so less honky is less honky. You'd be looking at around 1K. That region, kind of drop that down a little bit with a fairly medium to wide Q for your filter. If you're looking for reducing shout, that's going to be 2.7 to 4K. You're going to reduce that whole range by a bit. Nirvana isn't a hill worth dying on. Have a great day. You too, Michael. We should have like one. Maybe we'll have you on the live stream at some point, and we can have a one-on-one about Nirvana, and you can fill me in on all the nuances and things I'm missing about their music. It's funny too, because like the other day I was listening to music that I remember from like when I was younger, right? And like as a kid, and I was listening to it because there was like a re-recorded version of it, and I remember like I listened to the band when I was younger, and eventually I grew out of it because I was like, yeah, this is crap. And I came back to it again the other day, and I went, you know what? I like this stuff. And it was In Flames Clayman, and obviously their stuff got worse over time, but it was with some stuff in there that was decent, but it's more like there's that nostalgia element to the whole thing that was like, yeah, I remember this stuff. This stuff was dope. Rap sounds best through no speakers. We just unplug it. Yes, it sounds so good. Closet Barry Manilow superfan. Nah. No, the music. Hey, I could go through my list of music of artists who I have on my Kobuz playlist. Shout out to Kobuz at the moment. What the heck? Oh, okay, I don't have. There we go. So here's what I have in my Kobuz. Shout out to Kobuz. I have Stevie Ray Vaughan. I have Esperanza Spalding. Esperanza Spalding is dope. Really weird, but really good. Michael Bublé, not the most well-recorded stuff, but he's a good singer. Patricia Barber, Sophie Millman, whole bunch of piano, like Scandinavian piano jazz, like I say Scandinavian, I don't know where they're from, but it's that sort of style, right? So like Tingval Trio and Tord Gustafsson Trio, stuff like that. What else? Helga Lane Trio. I think I'm not sure where he's from actually. And then I have Julian Lage, he's a phenomenal guitar player, jazz guitar player. Ulf Wakenius, also a jazz guitar player, who does some flamenco stuff as well. Michael Walney Trio is also really good. Chick Corea, of course. Al Di Meola, Leslie Odom Jr. I think you guys get the idea, right? Like, Diana Krall, Ira Rantala, Brad Meldau, Bad Plus, Go-Go Penguin. Some stuff probably is recognizable there, but so that's my current stuff. Yeah, Esperanza Spalding's earlier work. Yeah. So it's funny because I have the album that I have right now. I was just listening to it is Emily's De-Evolution, but I do agree that the earlier, I don't like the most recent one. The song, I mean, it's not that I just haven't gotten into it, but like it's weird. It's really weird. But also, I like 12 Little Spells. I think it's decent. And then so there's the jazz side of things for sure. But then there's also like I've got Pain of Salvation on here. I've got I'm just going through, this is just dumb, but there's Leprous on here. There's Opeth. So Kill Switch Engage. So there's also a lot of like more nostalgic, stuff from when I was younger. I just go back there every once in a while. Go-Go Penguin, yes, they're awesome. And Steven Wilson. Steven Wilson's on there as well. The Bee Gees. I don't believe you. ZMF are great with communication, making things right. Oh, you're talking about something else. Oh, they sent you the wrong pads twice? Oh, I'm sure that they would figure that out. Yeah. Kato? Thanks. DAC plus amp recommendation for the headphone. That's one where it does matter. Planning to buy it with a balanced cable. Usually, just keep in mind it's heavy. It's heavy. Yeah, I'm not the right person for that, but I'm gonna say you could save a bit of money and go. Okay, so my recommendation, my preference with the head-to-phone was actually that IFI, the Pro ICANN, because it had that incremental bass shelf filter, right? That you could just boost up. I really liked that, and that thing has so much power. So you can run the headphone with it. It's well suited for it. But that's also out of that budget, right? So if your budget is lower, I'm gonna say go with a balanced, one of those balanced stacks that's like, the good enough stuff. I'm thinking of you could go cheap and go Modius Magnius, right, for example. Now that's obviously not like you could probably find something else with that budget, that might be better, but I'm going to tell you right now the Modius Magnius is good enough, right, for the head-to-phone. So my preference would be the IFI stack, but that is very expensive. And I don't think it's fair to I mean, the other thing you could do is there's the IHA6, which would work with it, but the IHA6 is only you could go for the IDAC 6 and IHA6 combo. I don't know if that makes sense these days. It's a bit older, right? And I haven't really refreshed it. And then also, it's only really suitable for headphones like that one that are these ridiculous, power hungry things. So, because with other headphones, you'll find that there's noise floor. So, like with more sensitive headphones, up to the balanced output. Is the Qdelix to get the best of the SA6 worth getting IFI Black Label signature? Those are very different things in very different price brackets. So again, it all depends on your use case. If you're just sitting at a desk and you're plugging, like the iFi Black Label signature and all that stuff, the main function of that is more for the versatility of a small device that's well, it's not that small, but a generally portable device that has stupid amounts of power and is exceptionally versatile for a wide range of equipment. So you can drive, the inefficient planars off of it. You can drive, more sensitive dynamic drivers, lower impedance dynamic driver headphones off of it. You can drive IEMs off of it, right? You could have bass boost function. It's just it's a Swiss Army knife, right? That's the reason to get the iFi Black Label signature. But if you don't see yourself using all, like, more than one of those things, right, or for more than one of those purposes, I don't really see a reason to go for that over even just something else that's maybe a more modestly priced DAP, or just a. I mean, again, for my use case, I probably would just go with the Qdelix 5K, but that's different. That's only because I like the wireless functionality there, and I just sort of clip it into my belt loop there. But if you're not doing that, if you don't care about that, you could go with a DAP or something like that, or some other device there. I'm sorry, you'd want to ask Theo about that. For the SA6 specifically, right? I think I'm thinking of, there's DAPs from iBasso. That would probably be what I would recommend, because if you don't need all those functions, you certainly don't need all the power from the Black Label. That thing is insane for power. Let's see. Edition XS for 400 or Ananda at no SRP? Edition XS. Well, 400, that's aggressive. That's yeah. I still think it's a good value at 500. I mean, it depends. If you have a larger head, you'll be fine with the Edition XS. If you have a smaller head, a lot of people hate that headband. Our music libraries are very similar. Okay. maybe I'm not alone. There's two of us. Foo Fighters are as vanilla as rock music can get. Fight me. I think it can get more vanilla than that, but I get what you're saying. I'm not going to fight you on that. Thoughts on the A90 stack? No. Hodison says, stay away from anything topping. Okay, I'm not going to say that, because there are things that the topping stuff, topping and SMSL, right? It's basically the same stuff, and they're doing the same thing. And I think somebody was even saying that they're made in the same factory, or like there's the factories making them side by side, something like that. I'm not sure, but those DACs and amps. So I don't like the topping A90 specifically, but the ideas behind what they're doing and bringing that stuff to bringing good, well measuring devices to a much more modest price tag. That's great. That's not a bad thing, right? Now we have tons of power. We have, low distortion. We have low IMD, or no, there's no issues with that. It's fine, right? I have two issues with the A90. Three, I guess. One of them is that it's redundant, because nobody needs the A90 over even Topping's own more modestly priced stuff, or even less expensive stuff. Nobody needs, there's no benefit to the A90 over some of their lower stuff for 99% of headphones. That's the first issue. The second issue is a more significant one, and it's that the A90 has a noise floor issue. It's got a ground loop issue that causes really bad noise floor. And if it were measured with that ground loop, so basically if it was measured in the situation of USB with RCA, it would not have scored anywhere near as high on SYNAD, and thus the narrative would have changed around it completely. Nobody would be even paying attention to it. But the problem is it wasn't actually evaluated in that context, which is fine in a way, because you like. I'd like to think that if I were using an A90, well, I actually have one at the studio, but when using the A90, I use it balanced, right? And I think most people should probably be using it balanced as well. Well, definitely should be using it balanced. And then that isn't really as much of an issue, but it still has those as functions, right? You could still use it that way, and people might. And yeah, it's gonna cause problems. And the third issue is that it basically just has a tendency to suck the joy out of music. And that is just a pure subjective analysis. And that's the first thing I'm testing when I get that ABX box. I'm testing that against the Rebel amp. And because from my assessment there, just trying them out, people are like, oh yeah, it's a super clean sound. And maybe you don't like that super clean sound, right? And then maybe you like something that has more distortion. And then suddenly the measurements that the Rebel amp came out, and it was like, oh, they actually measure really well. So you just can't make that argument anymore. Like, that argument holds no water, right? The idea of, oh yeah, you're saying this because you don't like the clean sound that the A90 has. Well, the other one also measures well, so it also has clean sound, right? So this narrative around clean sound, it's no better than saying this is subjectively not as good sounding, or it sounds, whatever, right? Like whatever I'm saying about it based on having heard it, right? So yeah, I have subjective reasons that I don't like the A90. There's objective reasons which are more to do with the ground loop issue, but that's a situation that is not going to be applicable for everybody. So by all means, goalpost shift on that. And then the third reason is that I just don't like, it's not any better than anything else that they make. So yeah, that's the reason why I don't like the A90. But if you like the A90, nuts to what I say. The thing that bugs me is the narratives that get created around certain products, like the A90, again, as I just said, for those who care a lot about, low noise and low distortion, and they want tons of power, that's fine. Then that's great. If that's all you care about, and you're buying it because you want to feel good, you like the confidence that gives you, right? And the confidence gets you up in the morning, then go for it. But if I'm doing a brutally, just what it sounds like evaluation, not for me. And I should say that it's not like it's like that different. It's just compared to the Rebel amp, I like the Rebel amp better. Okay. Why people are talking about headphones and you answer the questions? I don't know what that means. I'm going to get to the super chats here now. Gil Reynard, thank you. I love jazz and like some hip hop. Do you not listen to bebop? No, I don't. Yeah, no. Just got the aria stealths from you guys actually. What's significantly better than those for jazz? No, I do think the aria is the right kind of thing for jazz, because you want to have that ear gain, like the presence region at 3K, because you want as much clarity there as you can. So what would be better than that? It's tough to say. I think, this is Vara, but that's ridiculously expensive, right? And even then, it's like, what is significantly better, right? Like, better, yes, but significantly, we're talking about headphones here, right? Like, so yeah, I would say save money. The only thing up from there, for jazz specifically, I would say is Sesvara. And then yeah, there is a jump there for sure. Are ultra high end DACs, Dave and May, worth it? For the same price, would you rather have $1,000 DAC or get another pair? Oh, for the same price, would you rather have $1,000 DAC and get another pair of Semify headphones? 100%, I would rather have a $1,000 DAC, even less, and another Summit pair of headphones. That's what I'm saying. Like, and that's what, like, I think Chronicle, or anybody who's sort of honest about this and has like done a lot of evaluation of this kind of stuff will come to that conclusion. typically. Yeah, maybe there's some differences here and there, but like proportional to the price, no. They don't. It's not at all close to the differences that headphones make. And so, yeah, I would just get another pair of Summit headphones. I think there are definitely people who, like, at that point, we're talking about the Dave and the Hollow May or whatever that is. There's nothing to do with value or being worth it at this point, right? Like, that question doesn't make sense. I'm not saying your question, but I'm saying like the idea of buying those because of their value proposition, it just is not. It does not make sense. And to the same, lesser extent, you could say the same thing about headphones, and that diminishing returns kick in. I do think there are like serious levels, right, for where headphone performance is, and where those, like, there are some headphones where you listen to it, you're like, yeah, this sounds like $1,000 headphone. There's other headphones where you listen to it and you're like, holy shit, this sounds like a $4,000 headphone, right, or something like that. Where you compare it against other headphones that are of a similar price, and you're like, that is meaningfully better, So yes, there are tiers, let's call them, but I don't think that's even that. You have to recognize like that only really matters. It's only really worth it if you care enough, right? And I'm gonna say most people probably don't. That's why it's a niche hobby. Can you comment on the 64 audio duo because BS Campfire Andromeda 2020? I'm not sure what that means. Looking to get either. I can't comment on the duo. I would ask Precog Vision about that. Because he has compared those two. All right. The A90 sounds no better than the cheaper topping DACs. A90 is an amplifier, so it's not a DAC. You're starting to sound like DMS. He's right about that. Those lower end ones and the A90, like it's not the benefit of the A90 is power, right? That's really the distance there. Topping A90 has circuit board potentiometer problem. Many of their amps do. This is what likely fried my headphones on the topping amp. So I'm not aware of any issues with the A90 and that. Maybe there is. I haven't followed that, but I do know there was an issue with the L30 at one point, and I think they fixed that. So I do think that like there's really good value coming out from topping an SMSL. Like they're producing stuff that is. This is what I was saying earlier. Like, don't mistake me for saying like topping bad, SMSL bad. That's not the route that I'm going here. I'm just saying, like, because specifically they are making stuff at much lower price tags, right? Like that have tons of power, and they are absolutely, the good enough sources. But my criticism of the A90 has more to do with that specific amplifier, less all, of their lineup, or their approach, or what their goals are, and that kind of stuff. Like, I think it's totally fine that they're trying to do what they are, and actually think it's good. It's laudable. This is the thing that, like, I don't like to evaluate brands. I like to evaluate products, because one brand can be. Campfire is a great example of this, right? The Andromeda, great, right? It's a it's a bit older now, but even today, there are people who love that IEM. I think it's still a fantastic IEM. The 2020, and even the older one. But almost all of their other products are not on the same level. You could say, oh yeah, I like the way that some of these ones sounds, but like objectively, as far as like how many of like where the attention goes for Campfire, it's mostly because of the Andromeda. And so, if I evaluate if I evaluate, based on a brand, I probably wouldn't have a lot of great things to say, but then the Andromeda is there, right? It's great. So I think we have to approach it other things the same way. We have to basically just ignore the brand and say, let's look at the product. Is this great? or is it, or what's not good about it, right? Or, what do I like about it? Not you know, this brand was, I like their, I mean, with that said, I might have a preference for the way that, one brand conducts themselves over another, but it's nothing to do with product evaluations. Nobody listens to Ulfocenius. Nobody listens to Ulfocenius and Pain of Salvation at the same time. I don't know why. Well, not simultaneously, but yeah, on the same. Yeah, it's a bit of an esoteric music taste. With Pain of Salvation, they're a group where they walk the line between pretentious and genius, like way too close. Like it's, that there's that like issue a little bit with artists who take themselves too seriously. Occasionally they produce something that is just amazing, and that dude can really sing. But oftentimes they are on the wrong end of that line, and like it just is. You can't help but roll your eyes a little bit. But I'd like to think that when they do make stuff that is, on the right side of that, it makes up for it. Yeah, you're gonna on the ZMF pad thing. You're gonna have to talk to them about that. I've not had nothing but great experiences with Zach and Bevan, and I think that's pretty common for most people. So what you're saying here is a bit unique. I've not had that. I've not seen that. Ananda versus Edition X purely for orchestral music. I'm going to say Ananda. But in so many ways, I think the decision for one or the other should come down to the fit, the headband, and the whether or not you require cup swivel. Because for me, that was the thing that, that's the reason why I think that I would prefer the Edition XS. But they're very similar. The Ananda has a little bit more upper mid ear gain, so it's a little bit more presence and clarity focused there, and it's a little bit more balanced in the upper treble as well. But the Edition XS has a lower resonance frequency, meaning that if you don't get a perfect seal, it's fine. So you get a little bit more of that bass coming through. Why some people care about headphones and why some people don't care about headphones. It's more why some people care about the way their music sounds and why some people don't care about the way their music sounds. I don't think that's uniquely to headphones, right? But yeah, certainly in headphones. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think about that a lot. I think about why is it that I can put Hi-Fi Man Susvara on somebody and one person, and they might be, this is the best thing I've ever heard. I love this thing. How much does this cost? And then they spit their coffee out when I tell them the price. And then I can put that headphone on someone else, and they can go, yeah, it sounds like headphones. That's all right. Sounds good. But like they'll like it, but they won't really care. They won't give a shit. So, yeah, it's a good question. Some people just they don't care how their music sounds. Like when I drive, I go visit my family who lives in the interior, and because I live on the coast, and it's about a 5-hour drive to get there. And my car has some of the worst speakers I've ever heard. It's horrible. Maybe it's because I'm getting more used to, like I'm used to good sound now, but like it sounds just awful to the point where I don't like to listen to music. I listen to podcasts and that's it, because I can't stand the way that music sounds because it sounds so horrible. And yeah, maybe if I'd never had the experience of good, headphones or good sound, then I wouldn't care, but still. There's other people who just don't care. They're totally fine with that. Which headphones and amp combo in your collection attracts you more and gets your ear time most of the occasion? This is all right. I need to do a video about this because this pairing that I don't own these. Okay, just make that clear. I'm borrowing the amplifier from the office. So this is the Alir with the Utopia pads, and I'm running it off the Amps and Sound Kenzie out of the 32 ohm out. That combination is insane, and it's just the right, like, it is, I say it's guilty pleasure because it does boost the bass and down tilt it a little bit, but it's just this smooth, like, oh, I could listen to this just all day, and it is, I mean, it's at the point where guilty pleasure meets like preference, I guess, and it's just so that gets more head time than anything else. I would say this situation I have right now with and then for IEMs, it would be the SA6, the Dino SA6. Even though yes, there are other, let's say more good like high end or correct sounding stuff out there. These are the ones that I end up using more. We'll do a couple more here. Keep going a little bit here. Regardless of the price, which ZMF headphone do you recommend? Looking for deep, rich, textured, low end without sacrificing detail. Thanks, love the channel. All right, so I would say I mean, it's tough to like not be very curious about that Atrium. Man, like for me. Yeah, right. I'm working for ZMF customer service now. Zach, if you're watching, the invoice is in the mail. No, just kidding. No, I would say the Atrium might be. I'd have to listen to it. I haven't heard of it. I haven't heard it yet. But for me, the Auteur was like the perfect, like the right tonal balance overall. And it didn't have quite the same technical chops that the Verite had, but the Verite didn't have the tonal balance benefits of the Auteur. And I don't. Maybe this is something you can ask Zach when you're going through the purchase process, because I think you get to, like, maybe he'll email you, you email him or whatever, and ask this question. But like, to figure out where the Atrium falls on the technicalities front between the Auteur and the Verite would be an interesting question. And in some ways, that's the one that I'd be the most curious about it today. I think, he's done a lot and with that and taken a lot of time with that. And the BIOS Helios driver there is very interesting to me as well. So yes, I'm going to say I haven't heard it, so I can't tell you, I can't give commentary on it, but I think it would be a mistake to not consider that strongly if you're going to consider a ZMF headphone. All right. Soon I'll be buying Aria Stealth, pairing with IFI Micro IDSD Signature. Good combination. Yeah, that's great, actually, because then you can just flip the bass boost function if you want to get a bass shelf, right? It's great. Hey, if someone somehow stole all your headphones, which 3 are you going to go and buy first to restart your collection? Much respect. It's the same ones. No, just kidding. No, it's not these. So I'd need a close back. I would probably go with either an LCD XC, an Aeon 2 Noir, or a Focal Radiance. One of those 3 for the closeback. I'd lean towards Focal Radiance because it's very comfortable. Easier to wear for long times than the LCD XC. Also, the Aeon 2 Noir is very comfortable and more portable, so maybe it comes down to that. But probably Focal Radiance. So it would be Celesti, but I find that like my head's just too big and the Celesti clamp's a bit harder. But for open back, it would be probably if I had the money, I would go with the Susvara, of course. That's definitely out of my price range. those high end flagships are all awesome. I think also on that list would be LCD-X 2021, and then under $1,000, I'd start looking at like the clear, or like these, but these ones are discontinued. So it's now the LX, but different pads. So maybe I'd try and get this combo again. But and the only reason for this one, like, you can't do the same thing with the clear. You'd have to go with a different amplifier. But I think I would still do that. Like, go with the clear and like the 8 ohm out or something like that. Or this, right? I see them as sort of synonymous, but which one you get changes depending on, or which one you get determines the amplifier outputs that you use, because their impedances are different. And then I also probably see if I can find myself a used HE6, original HE6, in good condition. That's what I would do. I have not heard the Denafrips thing. No. Let's see. Spinal Tap. Love that movie. I do need to listen to the Aeolus again, because I did hear that once. HE6 SEV2 versus LCD-X 2021. Well, the LCD-X 2021 is built way better. The HE6 SEV2, it is good value when you can get it from that crazy discount, like the whatever it was, like $700. That's when you buy that one. Don't buy it at the $1,800 or whatever, right? But HE6 SEV2, the driver there performs really well. I'll say that much. the rest of the design, I'm not a fan of like the somewhat rickety headband designs. The same with the Edition XS, right? Like they have cup swivel, which is nice, but they don't feel that great. But yes, the HE6 SEV2 is a good value headphone at that sale price. And if you're looking at that, like $1,100 or whatever it is for the LCD-X 2021 versus $700 for the HE6 SEV2, HE6 SEV2 is the better value. As much as the LCD-X 2021 is really good value, I would probably say the $700 one. But it depends, how much does build quality matter to you? How much does, the headband construction, all that stuff matter to you? Yeah. Is it what? ZMF refused to speak to me about the wrong pads issue, saying they've done everything they're willing to do. I have their email and wrong pads. I don't know. I don't want to denigrate your experiences, because I don't know the reality of what's gone on there. But I do. It raises another issue that I do sometimes see people who've had negative experience with them, who've had negative experiences, where most people have had very positive ones, and in most cases, I think there's either a communication issue or just something that just happens where it's not there's a misunderstanding of some kind. And so let me just say that I highly doubt that for most people, being regular customers of ZMF, that they would have those issues. So it sucks that you had that happen to you, if in fact that genuinely did happen to you. But they are some of the nicest and most caring people in the industry, and they will go. I mean, I know I'm a reviewer, so I don't get that same thing, but I am also a customer of ZMF. Before I was a reviewer, I bought the Auteur. I can tell you firsthand that those guys are the most caring and helpful people, some of the most caring and helpful people in the industry. And so, I have a very hard time with the idea that, they have a bad customer service policy or something like that. So I really think if you want to figure that out, it's more a matter of figuring out where the misunderstanding was, and then, getting past that, figuring that out. But the other thing is, like, you're not gonna, like, what you say here, the court of public opinion will have to do that. Perhaps the MF will resolve the mishap. You need to figure this out, I would say, with ZMF one-on-one. You see people do this sometimes, like, they'll be like, oh yeah, like, they'll make a post on Headphone, I don't trust whatever. What they'll never do is they'll never post both sides of the story. They will post how things were for them, which you can't really blame them for doing that. But at the same time, it's like there are typically two sides to every story here. There is likely to be something more going on there that is the reason for this. And maybe it's just a pure, like, it's nobody's fault or anything like that. Maybe it is somebody's fault. I'm not saying I know anything about this, but seriously, like, I don't like the idea of just giving, here's what happened to me, so therefore, have them, like, people do this for the benefit of trying to get special privileges, and that rubs me the wrong way. So if you are going to try and get the court of public opinion to weigh in on this, I think you're going to have a bit of an uphill battle when it comes to ZMF and their customer service, because they are, again, highly lauded for how awesome they are in the community. But second, I think don't do so with the intention of trying to get special privileges, or special, treatment, right? Because that sets a terrible precedent. To try and get more out of a situation, right? I know. I'm sure you guys have seen this happen in other places as well. Let's see. I've tried to impress friends, family with my headphones, and usually I can get them to recognize the audiophile qualities, but most of them aren't affected by it in the way we are. Yeah. I actually think that, like, it has more to do with, like, the personality traits, or, like, the type of person. Not everybody is perceptive in the same ways to the same degree, and some of us are just super, like, perceptive about certain things. And when it comes to music, and I think this is, like, the nexus of, like, highly perceptive people, and then audio, and then music lovers, right? And, like, that's this, like, niche that we live in. Well, I mean, to varying degrees of perceptive, right? But I'd like to think that at the very least, most people who are into headphones or into audio equipment are doing so because they are sufficiently perceptive that they do give a shit. Judge Andrew coming soon to YouTube. Oh, no. I mean, it's true, though. The other side of it is that I'm biased because I have had nothing but positive, encounters with Zach and Bevan. They've been on this channel. They've been great. So, I'm not going to be able to say anything from the other side because I've never experienced what this person is saying. So, yeah. And also, I would suggest that this probably isn't the best place to make the case for you because, like, this is just a YouTube channel. And, yeah, I think it's best to try and... Oh, Michael's still here. What up? Yeah, ZMF and Odyssey, they're both companies that stand-up companies, you put it, yeah. I would say try and resolve that on a one-on-one basis with them. Resolve it individually, and that will go longer. That will do better in the long run. All right, there was another question there that I missed? Oh, HE6 SEV2 is $550. Wow, yikes, that's cheap. Oh yeah, like a deep Boxing Day sale or something like that. Oh, the Focal Clear OGs are cheaper because they are exclusive now to headphones.com. Or I think in North America, and they are at around, I can't remember exactly, around $1,000. And they used to be 1,500 or something like that. So I think that's maybe why you're seeing them cheaper. I don't think they're getting rid of anything. Let's see. LCD2 close back. Just get the XC, man. No, I think I did actually measure an LCD2 close back, and it didn't have the same redesign as the XC did, because with the X and XC they changed the trace, and they changed them. Oh, I can't remember exactly what it was they did, but at the very least they took out some of the phasers as well. So, and yeah, it resulted in a very different tuning, and a good one. Well, I still think it needs a bass shelf, right? You need to EQ some bass in there, but yeah, the two close back, if I remember, I did measure that, and I was not. It didn't change the same way, if that makes sense. Okay. Taconi Elite velour pads on LCD2C. Classic, you mean? Oh, are you? Yeah, okay, yeah, classic. Recommend better pads? I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not a big fan of LCD2 Classic. I find I think the LCD2F is just better. But I know a lot of people like the Classic. I think before the LCD2F had the 2021 pads, I think before it had like some pretty serious tonality issues. I think that's probably better now. And that's really where the LCD2 Classic probably did better, was in the tuning. I found the XC dry and harsh without EQ. Does that sound reasonable, or maybe unit variation situation? No. Like I would say, so there's a couple of things there, right? When you measure it on the brig, right, and you have a good coupling, it measures pretty well. But the problem is that is not necessarily how the coupling is going to be on individual people. So I'd say more than unit variation, as long as you're talking about a 2021 revision LCD XC, because they talked about what those changes were. So it's not like there was a stealth revision or anything like that, right? It's very like well known and talked about changes in the 2021 revision. But so the point here that I'm making is that we have no idea what the coupling is going to be like on your head or on anybody else's head, right? All you really know is what it's going to be like on your own head, and then what it's like on the rig. And so, this is what I was saying earlier, like a long time ago in the stream, about the resonance frequency. If the coupling on your head is not perfect, like say you wear glasses with thick arms or something like that, then there's a chance that some of the bass could drop out. In the case of the LCD XC in particular, that has the LCD XC and so the Odysseys, they don't have as low resonance frequencies as the hi-fi mans do, meaning they don't like the drivers themselves won't extend as far in the bass when the seal is broken, and that means that you need to have that seal there for the LCD XC, and so when your comments there sounding dry and harsh. That could be a number of things, but I'd say most likely that's probably because of the coupling on your head being different from what it's like when it's on the rig, for example. But even if it is the right coupling for you, right? That headphone actually has a lot of ear gain, so you might actually just prefer more bass than what it has. And so I just recommend adding a bass shelf. The other thing that people don't realize, there's people who are like super anti EQ. They're like, don't EQ, blah blah blah. If they fully understood how headphones work, they would not be saying that, because there are situations where we should not expect a bass shelf, and you might as well add one in, because we're talking about closed back headphones, and yes, you can engineer that pretty easily with not easily, but you can basically that's what these do, right? You get a pad, you get the bass shelf as a result of the rest of the tuning here with the pads, and because it's closed back. With open backs, you might as well do that, because there are acoustic limitations to what you're able to do with, like, you can't control that resonance frequency as easily. You can still control it sort of by introducing a controlled leak, sort of, but you can't do that quite the same way that you can with the closed back. So you might as well EQ them. Now, I say that with the LCD XC in mind, only because I know it's a closed back. I say that only because with the LCD XC, if you find that you aren't getting the coupling that would allow for the best bass extension, then you might as well just EQ that up. So that's really the point there, right? LCD XC go very good with meatloaf and mashed potatoes. All right. $550. Wow. Yeah, that's a good price. Yeah, what Hodison's is saying here, you're going to find it, going to taste vinegar until you get squared away with ZMF. Trying to figure out where the misunderstanding is there, because I'm sure that's what's going on. Your MacBook drives them fine, man. That's maybe the new MacBooks have a amplifier. I would recommend an amplifier for the Aeon 2s. Yes. Thoughts on upgrading from the DT770 to the DT700? No, do not. Do not do that. No, stop. Someone can clip that. I don't know. I don't know if you can do that on YouTube. No, I don't think that the 700 is at all an upgrade on the 770. It is fine, right? Like, it's just dull, and it's not it's okay. It is less V-shaped. I will give it that, but it is also not an upgrade. It is a side grade, right? If you're looking for something for music production, I would actually go, and again, I keep saying this, I would go with the K371. That is the closest to, well, at that price range, to a reference point. I mean, also, if you want an actual upgrade there, I'm going to recommend the Aeon X Closed from Drop, because the frequency, it's not the most detailed headphone there, but it has a frequency response and tonal balance that is so good that it doesn't matter, like, or at least it matters less, so if you're looking for a let's say correct and enjoyable kind of sound, the Aeon X Close, it's maybe a little bit much in upper treble air, but man, is it ever good for the price for that. What is it, like 500, 400, something like that? So I would say if you're considering the 700 and you actually want an upgrade, go with that. Or if you want to spend less money and you want something as a reference point for music, then the K371 is the way to go. Okay, let's do two more questions here. Two more. Let's two more spicy questions. I like the spicy ones. Yeah, I'd say the Antu Noir needs an amplifier. Yeah. Um, hmm. Do you have a problem where your brain sometimes perceives sound on headphones as excessively harsh, but most other days it's completely fine? I'm going to explain burn-in myths. I actually think we can explain burn-in myths in more tangible ways. I mean, yes, I think that's a thing, right? Like, when you first listen at the beginning of the day, that's different from if you're listening at the end of the day, and you might have come to different conclusions. But I don't think, like, I listen over the course, like when I'm doing my evaluations, it happens over the course of weeks, right? So there's that isn't it's maybe like a factor for first impressions, but I don't think it's a factor for complete judgments. But I actually think burn-in is something we can explain a little bit more easily with or a little bit more tangibly with the padware and pad like basically pad compression over time. If anything, that's probably, and like also if people are using those like foam ear tips, that might have something to do with it as well. Like the way that like if you put them in your ear and then they eventually kind of conform, like maybe that has some sort of effect there as well for in-ears. But yeah, I think the question of burn-in, it's like, yeah, there is when manufacturers are making headphones, right? They're actively driver matching and doing all this stuff that would be using the headphones, right? And if burn-in was like a real thing, which it has been expressed to me by people who make headphone drivers, that things can actually change over the course of like 30 minutes of use or something like that. We probably shouldn't expect that to happen with finished products that you get in the hand, right? Because these things have been driver matched first. And more likely than anything is that you're just dealing with the effects of pad compression or pad wear of some kind. Biodynamic is so 1990. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I this is the thing, right? Like, yeah, this is probably the last comment, because you guys are talking about biodynamics and stuff like that. Oh, I see. I'll get to that in a second. I'll see super chat here. Why are wireless headphones and IEMs lagging behind wired? And what do you think are the missing pieces for wireless to reach the same sound quality? Good question. So I think a couple of things. I think right now the biggest issue is cost, and I think we will actually start to see over the next however long some improvements there. As far as the acoustic stuff is concerned, I mean, you do still have some designs that require a lot more power than you could put into a headphone cup without compromising, weight. Like if you're thinking about like what goes into the actual physical construction of a headphone, you need to be very precise and careful about weight of materials, and also that you don't have any like anything compromising the acoustics of what you're designing. So those things are very like you can't just like slap a thing on there, right? But then you see what like a wireless transmitter on there. But then you see what companies like Hi-Fi Men are doing with the Deva and stuff like that, which to me that is a market that I will never understand. The idea of wireless open back headphones, that's not something that makes sense to me. But the idea there that they've done, where they just have like a little thing that pops on, that is actually kind of genius, where the amplifier and Bluetooth module is a separate thing that plugs into the headphone, and it is not built into the cup. Now, I don't know if that's going to have widespread appeal or really catch on or anything like that, but that makes more sense to me than trying to build it into the cup. Yeah, so I think it's more just a matter of it's a matter of that question, right? Like the materials and like how do we do this without compromising on the acoustic design and also weight. and because you'd have to make it reasonably efficient as well. The other is the cost of doing the wireless, like the cost of whatever chips get involved in the Bluetooth, in the wireless transmission. So that kind of screws things up a little bit, meaning that you're not able to hit your cost targets, I guess, as easily. I think this is going to change. I think we will start to see, that increase a little bit. But yeah, I want to get back to that other question, or the other topic about the Beyerdynamic headphones. It's really like the thing that kind of gets to me is that, and this is sort of the whole reason why I'm doing this. Why I don't know, like I feel okay about my like before I was a full-time headphone reviewer. I was just sort of doing this on the side for fun. But the reason why I was doing it, right, is because I felt that the narratives around certain products and like the kind of canonical inertia behind them was just wrong. And Beyerdynamic, I think, is a good example of this. And something Kryn mentioned recently about the reasons why artists will use like a DT770, for example, in a studio. That is a really good point on this same topic. You see an artist using a DT770 in the recording studio when they're singing or whatever, a vocalist, for example. They're not using it because they think that's like the most referencey, best studio appropriate sound quality, right? They're using it for entirely different reasons, like isolation or something like that, right? But there are bound to be a lot of people who see that and go, oh, they're using that. They're artists, they're musicians. They must know what they're talking about. Therefore, I should get that because it's studio reference sound. And then that idea gets perpetuated. That narrative gets created around these products. That, there's all kinds of years of inertia of these products getting used in studios. The more they get used in studios, the more people think, oh, that must be what studio headphones are supposed to sound like. The fact of it is that, not nobody, but many people who are buying those headphones don't stop to ask themselves, is this actually what studio reference should be? Because if you stop and ask that question, it's not the DT770. I can promise you that, right? So these narratives that get created around products, and you start to see them everywhere. Walk into a studio and you'll see a whole bunch of DT770s lying around, I'm sure, or like whatever Beyerdynamic headphones. It bothers me that this inertia exists, right? Now, that's not a criticism necessarily of the DT770, because I actually recommend that headphone all the time. But I don't think people should be buying it for the sake of studio reference sound. And when they do buy it, and somebody's like, oh, why'd you pick that one? I just don't, like, it doesn't make sense for them to say, like, if they say, oh, I bought it because it's, I like studio reference sound. That's just false. Like, I mean, they might think that it is, right? And that's maybe why they bought it. But, that's not, like, that narrative needs to change. So anyways, that's my last rant for the day. And it's the same is true for the DT1990 and I would say the closest of their headphones to that kind of sound would be maybe like that one of the DT880s. Maybe to a lesser extent the DT700, but even still, there are other reasons why a studio musician might want to buy those headphones or use those headphones. Everything from the making use of a coiled cable to the extra isolation and clamp from the DT770, or whatever, right? Or DT700, because they're a bit clampy. To the build quality of being able to just like throw it around and not have to worry about that, right? There's all kinds of other reasons why you might want to do that. If you actually look at the sound quality of those headphones, like the frequency response, they're not reference. So, anyways, that's the last soapbox I'll get on, right? You've heard some say K371 are bass cannons. I have an answer for that, actually. If you look at the frequency response, they're not. But the K371 behaves in a different way from other... Like, okay, so... I don't want to get into the whole Helmholtz resonator thing, but so with the K371, if you create more clamp pressure, you actually get less bass. You still get full bass extension, but the bass boost shows up lower down if there's more clamp. If there's less clamp, the way it has to do with the way that those pads kind of compress and conform, at least from my testing on the rig with that headphone. If you have less clamp, you get the bass cannon-y kind of thing in the mid bass and the upper bass a little bit more, a little bit too much. So the answer there is actually it depends on how big your head is. So for big heads, it's probably going to be fine. For small heads, you may end up having too much bass with the K371. I hope that clears that up. Which also explains why DMS prefers the K361 and I prefer the K371, right? We have different head shapes, and so that bass level is going to be different for us on those. For portable amp stuff, I don't know, check some of the IFI. They make a lot of portable stuff like I'm not sure how much that costs though. The X cans and things like that. There's also, if you want those small little dongle things, there's those the Dragonfly Red and stuff like that. And there's a number of other things that are like that I'd check out. But yeah, they're powerful enough for sure. But I don't know what the modern MacBooks have for power outputs. Honestly, you could find that there is no difference if there is actually a power output. If there's like a sufficient amplifier in there in modern MacBooks, I'm not sure. Yeah, closed back headphones. I mean, I like IEMs, but like I prefer over-ear headphones. Yeah. You have a huge head. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this live stream. Thanks for all of your questions. I think I answered all of the super chats. This was a fun one today, and yeah, I look forward to doing the next one. Hopefully, I don't know if I'll do one exactly next weekend. I might, but yeah, I will. I know I haven't done reviews on the channel this past week, but I'm working on a video. It's just taking me a lot longer for this video. It's actually a video on our trip to Focal, the factory tour that we did, and I have to pull in footage from a number of different places. So look out for that on the channel in the coming week. I think probably sometime next week it'll be done. But we also have some other content from the other folks on the channel as well coming out soon. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Anyways, have a good weekend, guys. As usual, if you want more information on headphones, there's links in the description for that. More information if you want to see the measurement database, that's on the forum there, also linked in the description. And check out the review section up on headphones.com. I will see you in the next one.